Welcome to the Art Lady's home, and today I'm going to talk about countertops. And the countertop that I chose was granite for my home, and I have a great love being an art teacher for stone. I actually stone carve. I carve sculptures out of alabaster, and I have a rock collection, and I was born in New Hampshire, the granite state, so the granite countertops were kind of my favorite. I did look at every single option because when I did this kitchen, I researched everything. And every option that I came up with, Corian, the composite granites, all of those were lovely. But when I found that if I'm going to spend just as much money, I'm going to get the granite. And so I opted for granite. And what I did was I ended up going to the granite yards and going to those big box stores and looking at their granite. And just, getting an idea of what colors I wanted. And when I found several that I really liked, what I did was I made some sketches of aerial views of my kitchen, just so I could visually see what this is going to look like in my kitchen. I didn't want to make this huge purchase because one of the biggest expenses in this kitchen remodel was the cabinets, one, and the granite. They were almost equal in price. So I did not want to have to change my mind or buy something like this that I hate. And I've done it many times before where I purchase something and I'm not liking it. And so if I'm going to spend this much money, I want to really like it. So a good suggestion is to just do little drawings and sketches of what it's going to look like. And so here's some of the examples. For example, on this one, this was a piece that was absolutely gorgeous. When you go to a granite yard, sometimes the pieces that you see in stores are not what you see in the granite yard. And the pieces in those granite yards are absolutely gorgeous, especially for a rock lover like me. And I wasn't even going to go into the black area, but the pieces I saw I fell in love with so much that I actually was considering them. And so I brought home the sample, and then I did a quick little sketch, for example, of what is it going to look like in my kitchen. And the flooring that I have is this Brazilian cherry, so I used some colored pencils and tried to get that kind of cherry color. And then I did my cherry accent stain. This is cherry stain. I did the accent furnitures just to see what it was going to look like, and the rest is like a glazed cabinets. And so I actually drew on here what the piece looked like from the granite yard. Of course, I took tons of pictures at the granite yards. And then I went home, and when I was actually trying to make my decision, when I narrowed it down, and this is what I narrowed it down to, the colors. This is a plain, almost a very plain whitish with lots of granite grays in it. And then this is oh God, that scared me. This is this has a little bit more rusty orangey in it. A little bits of pink. I really love this pink look. And then I ended up finding the color I ended up going with. And this was a Patagonia, the color I ended up going with was a Patagonia, a Bordeaux. And it was this piece was very rare. I went to 11 granite yards. And when you see granite, sometimes when you go to a granite yard or in a store, they name it one color, but they sometimes make up that name. It's not exactly the name that everybody else goes by, the piece for the rock. And actually this piece was a piece that was absolutely beautiful that I fell in love with. It had a huge, huge vein of quartz right through it. And actually I'll show you over here where it connects. And when I went to other granite yards to look, here's the next slice when they slice the granite. It shows a little bit less of that beautiful vein. And also with these particular pieces that were at this one granite yard, this was a little bit more pinker than any of the others. This Patagonia Bordeaux tends to run with veins of a lot of deeper reds and burgundy colors in it. It also has little tiny pieces of real garnet right in it. Just incredible. I mean, I just flip. Every time I go into any of these granite yards, the pieces are just amazing. It just blows me away how beautiful nature is. But there's actually the garnet crystals right in it. Here's some real garnet crystals from my rock collection. You can see. But anyways, so find your color And once you narrow it down, then you can decide on what it's going to look like. And if you need to be visual like I am, this tip is to actually do your sketches and then decide. And for me, oh, it takes me weeks to contemplate over this. What color am I going to do? And so this helps me so I can visually see it on there. So these were the 4 that I had narrowed down. And actually, the one I ended up going with was this Patagonia Bordeaux from one of the granite companies that's in Daytona Beach, because we're in Florida. But then, okay, once you get your deciding color, you love that color. Of course, I went to every single granite yard to see if they had it for who could get it for me for the cheapest. But like I said, when you see that one particular slab, the next granite yard in some of these kinds of granite. Now, some granite, there's one called Sicilian, I think it is, or something similar. But in some kinds of granite, every slice is almost the same. Some kinds. And black is pretty much almost black every slice. So you can maybe find it at another granite yard for cheaper. But in some particulars, like for example, this one, if you like a slab, a particular slab with veining in it like this, you're not going to find that slab in any other granite yard. And so I suggest if you find something you truly love, put a deposit on it, because that piece could be sold. For example, there was only 2 or 3 slabs of this with this vein in it, and this is what I love. So I put a deposit on it to hold it, so it was mine. If you end up missing it, you know, and there was only a few of this pink color. And so, I mean, I suggest if you see something that is a particular kind of granite that is not common, then that's when you have to put the deposit on it, and you know, you have to pay what that company charges. But that's like biting the bullet. But anyways, so that's about color choice. Now, once you're at the granite company and you need to decide, there's so many decisions to make. It's just, it was so unbelievably mind-boggling. I couldn't even imagine. So, and I'm doing this project by myself. I'm a single mom, a teacher of 29 years, and I'm the decision maker. So, when I went to the granite yard, I wanted to design the island top. And so, once you choose your granite, another thing to think about is your edges. And this right here is a round, total round, curved edge. It's a very plain, very inexpensive cut. It is not the bottom baseline cut. It is an upgrade. And so I opted to choose the rounded curve for the island. And that, like I said, was more money per linear foot. They charge you for these kinds of cuts. And then the next other cut that was an option, and people mix and match these cuts. This is just a cut right on the edge. It kind of squares off. So this is flat and left raw. They did nothing here, and they just kind of filed a little bit of this edge here to make it almost a slight square, but this is angled. I chose that cut here. Another choice that you have to make when you're at the granite yard purchasing granite is you have to decide how far do you want your countertops to overhang from the face of your cabinet. I chose a 2-inch overhang. There was an option for 1 inch, which is standard. I think that comes standard. But what happens with 1 inch is you have to take into consideration the thickness of the drawer, which in most cases is a little bit under a 1/2 inch. So that means the overhang would only be a 1/2 inch then. And then what would happen is, if I show you this view down, here's my overhang at a 1/2 inch, my knobs are going to stick out.
Oh my God.
So, and I have knobs that are about 1.5 inches. So if I'm looking straight down, my knobs are not going to stick out and kind of get you as you walk by. So that's another consideration. And it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. What should I do? What should I do? And so I opted for the 2-inch, which I was, you know, every time I made a decision, it was, am I making the right decision? It wasn't a, yeah, I did the right thing feeling. But in the end, I really liked the 2-inch overhang. It protects your knobs from your body, so that you're not brushing up against the knobs and getting your clothes caught on those knobs. So I'm very, very glad I chose the 2-inch overhangs. Another decision you have to make, and this is when you're designing your island countertop, your Granite salesman will help you design it, but you have the right to draw whatever you want on there. Draw every curve, and that's what I did. I drew my curves. You have to decide how big of your overhang do you want on each end. And for my overhangs, on the ends, I chose 6 inches because I knew that I wanted extra seating in my island for guests. We have big family gatherings all the time, and the island becomes the centerpiece. So on each end of my granite, my overhangs, it overhangs the end counters 6 inches. Underneath here, the midpoint is 12 inches. So my granite overhangs the island width by 6 inches in the widest part. And then of course I have this beautiful curve that I designed, and I actually drew it right on the granite when we were making the granite together. And then it's rounded on each edge. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I designed this countertop for the island in the island video. But that's a little bit of tips on what to think about in advance when you're ready to purchase your granite. And I hope you've learned something, a little bit of something from my experiences.